welcome to my podcast, Spiritual Quest, with me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by Spirit. I am very excited to share my gift with you and empower you to embrace your gift. So if you define yourself as a spiritual human being, then you've come to the right place. So prepare yourself now for an amazing journey where your soul will lead the way. Welcome to a new episode of the Spiritual Quest podcast. As a soul having a human experience, it's easy to get distracted by all the noise in the world and forget why we chose to come here in the first place. But what if there's a way for you to stay true to your soul's path with loving guidance from your guardian angel? My guest has been touched by angels, leading him on an incredible journey to discovering what he calls benevolent outcomes, which he shares through a series of books called The Gentle Way, a self-help guide for those who believe in angels. Tom Timor is an award-winning author, speaker, and entertainment industry CEO. His books include The Gentle Way, a self-help guide for those who believe in angels, which is a 4-book series, First Contact, Conversations with an ET, and Atlantis and Lemuria, The Lost Continents Revealed. The Gentle Way books provide a simple yet powerful tool for everyday use that is a giant step forward from the law of attraction, and include hundreds of stories from people all over the world living the gentle way. Tom is also a telepath, which has allowed him in a meditative state to provide detailed information about extraterrestrials, Earth's history, and the lost continents of Atlantis and Lemuria. I can't imagine a better way to end Season 2 of the Spiritual Quest podcast, Reinventing Your Life with spiritual teachers, healers, coaches, and mentors, than learning how to request the most benevolent outcomes that will get you to your destination much faster without any stress or fear holding you back. It's my great pleasure to welcome the inspiring author, Tom Timor. Welcome, Tom, to the Spiritual Quest podcast.
Great. Thank you for having me, Becky.
Well, thank you for being here. And I must admit, when I read up on you, wow, what an incredible story. And I would love for you to share a little bit about how you ended up discovering benevolent outcomes, also referred to as MBOs. And I prefer MBOs because it's easier to say.
Yes, it is. That's why I had to come up with an abbreviation for it, because I didn't want to have to write it most benevolent outcomes every time I said it. So anyway, it all started really back when my wife and I used to own a very small tour company, and I was kind of into astrology, but just looking at my daily forecast like anybody else. And lo and behold, one day in the Dallas Morning News, they had a story about this astrologer whose hobby was the Dallas Cowboys. And so he said, well, the Dallas Cowboys are not going to the Super Bowl this year, but they're going to go next year. And he gave about 8 reasons why. And so I said, gosh, I've never read anything like that. So I tore the article out of the paper, put it in my desk. And at that time, we owned the largest snow ski club in the state of Texas. And we took people to New Mexico and Utah and Colorado every week. And so I put that in my desk. At the end of the football season, I dragged it out, and he had hit on about 80%. And so a year in advance, I reserved 300 seats on the airlines down to Miami, and I was the very first tour operator to ever run a trip to the Super Bowl from Dallas. They didn't even know at that time whether anybody would want to go. It's not like it is today. It was because this was a number of years ago. So that kind of started me on the trek, so to speak. I started having all my ski club meetings and things like that, parties with, Mercury trine Venus, or, uh, things like that. So that, and we had all sorts of people that started getting married. So I knew I was doing good work from all these people meeting. And so that led me on. Then um, back in about 1979 or 80, my wife and I were supposed to travel to Manila to attend a World Congress of Travel Agents. And I had just been recording my dreams for about 2 weeks, and one of the dreams was very vivid. It had an explosion with a woman and some men involved. And so it was so vivid that my wife and I dropped Manila and added more days onto Hong Kong and Taiwan. So, so sure enough, terrorists blew up a bomb in the front of the hall and injured 10 or so travel agents, and they arrested a
Wow.
lady and 4 men. So after that, I said, I'm going to record my dreams the rest of my life. And recording dreams is really a great setup for learning how to meditate, because when you meditation, there are a couple of different ways to meditate. The way that I meditate is I simply put myself into a light, altered state. And that's where it's sort of like in between your sleep state and your waking state, like you're waking up from a dream. So that's why I say when you record dreams, it's a great way to start learning how to recognize what are called thought. Uh, yes, I'll remember it in a second.
Yeah.
Thought packets that come in through your pineal gland. That acts as the antenna for you, and uh, and that's how you become a telepath. Anybody can be a telepath because everyone has this pineal gland in the back of our heads. So things progressed, and one day I was reading a channeled article in the Sedona Journal of Emergence, and it was a channeled article by Robert Shapiro, and he was channeling a being by the name of Zosh, who I call Uncle Zosh. I've just talked to him recently, and so Joe said you can request benevolent outcomes in your life, and that just kind of rang a little bell with me, and so I started um, experimenting with it. And I started saying, I request a benevolent outcome for my drive to a restaurant and for a parking space in front of the restaurant. Little, simple, mundane things where you get immediate feedback. And that's what I tell people, that when you start requesting benevolent outcomes, don't say, oh, I want the perfect mate for me, because I've had women that have emailed me and say, Tom, I've been requesting the perfect mate for a whole month and nothing's happened yet. So
I'm
you have to
sorry, I
be
have to laugh at that.
you have to be patient with these big requests. You can request a benevolent outcome for the perfect job for you, the perfect home for you, and the perfect mate for you, but you've got to be patient on those. So that's why I say start with the mundane stuff, those uh, drives, to the post office or the grocery store, or asking for a parking space in front of a busy mall, things like that. That you get immediate feedback and you say, "Oh, this is really working." And like yesterday, I had requested a benevolent outcome for a parking space close to the door at Kroger's grocery supermarket, and also to not be rained on when I was either getting out of the car or anything. And so, sure enough, I got someone pulled out of the closest parking space to the front door you could possibly get. And when I got back to the car, there were raindrops on the car from rain. And when I drove home, it started lightly raining about 3 or 4 blocks from my house, and I went into the garage and didn't get rained on anywhere. So you can request things like that, and then as I mentioned to you before we started the show yesterday, we had about 5 or 6 tornadoes in the North Texas area. And before I went to my yoga class, I I said I ask any and all beings to aid and assist in keeping our house and all the houses around us completely safe. And and then when I got to the yoga studio, I said I ask any and all beings to aid and assist in keeping uh, the yoga studio and everyone in the yoga studio, all of our cars, all the people in the buildings surrounding us completely safe too. So the closest tornado to us was about 10 miles away, and did a little damage to I think a high school and a few houses. So um, it does absolutely protect you. I have one lady in Kansas that I put in one of my books that said that she had just moved to a farm in Kansas, and there was a tornado bearing down right on her house. She grabbed the kids, went to the basement, requested a benevolent outcome for their safety, and the tornado lifted up and went right over their house and continued on. So there are story after stories like that in my books. So anyway, that's how benevolent outcomes came about. I started writing some articles for the uh, Sedona Journal of Emergence, and eventually, as we can get into, um, they they were the ones that published my books. So um, my articles and all were quite well received, and I actually have a uh, I actually have a column in there every month for a number of years. Who knows how many? It's quite a number.
But I have a question for you, Tom, because this is powerful stuff. For me, it's powerful because when you acknowledge that this is really how it works, you create miracle. At least that's what I look at it. It's miracles. And so from a perspective of being just doing travel agency, getting the dreams, and then coming to trust in the angels. How did that go about? What happened with um,
Well,
that
it was simply
shaman, if you wish?
it was simply getting this feedback. Okay. And I neglected to mention, you're supposed to say these out loud,
Mm,
because I've been told over and over and over again that the human voice, scientists will rediscover, okay, because it was known in ancient times, but they will rediscover that how powerful the verbal voice is. And so when you request these benevolent outcomes with your voice, it's very, very powerful. And it's even more powerful when you say a benevolent prayer and everyone says exactly the same
mm.
benevolent prayer. So, as an example, in my weekly newsletters, which people can find at www.thegeneralwaybook.com, um, uh, you can find in my newsletters that I always have a couple or 2 or 3 benevolent prayers for you to say when you read the newsletter. And that has a crescendo effect, I'm told, uh, by my sources, if you want to call them, my guardian angel Theo, and Gaia, the soul of the earth, and Antura, my ET buddy. Um, it has this crescendo, and if say 10 people say the same benevolent prayer, it's like maybe 50 or 100 people. It becomes very, very powerful when everyone says the same thing.
I love listening to you because I must share this with you, Tom, that I do have a spiritual team that's been with me. My first recollection of Zarius, which is my spirit guide, it was actually in my mother's womb, and I played with him as I was growing up as a child. And I've been channeling him for a group for the last 7 years. And he always tells us this. And when you're saying this with a voice that, now we're going to rediscover how powerful the voice really is. He's always told us and the group to speak from our soul and to ask out loud. I didn't understand completely why that was so powerful until you now reconfirm everything that we've sort of received of knowledge, that you have to manifest it like on three levels: the spiritual, the human, and carry the emotion of it and allow it to be um, channeled out into the world, if you wish, to this dimension for that energy to rise and to lift. And so when you're telling this and we're doing this together, we're just doing it from a different perspective. But I'm thinking now, talking to you, knowing that we can say specific words and we all do it together, I think this will really, really shift and lift the vibration of Mother Earth and humanity. What do you think about that? What's your
Yes.
experience with that? You have a
How
lot
do
of
you,
people
how do you
contacting
think
you.
the pyramids were built? They weren't built by people rolling these huge blocks on tree stumps, whatever. Um, I was told that there were like at least a minimum of two or three groups of men, women, and children that would say a chant and attain a certain level of sound, and it would lift these huge blocks off the ground, and they were moved into place that way.
Wow, that makes so much sense when you're telling that. I mean, just having
And
sound healing.
I asked,
Yeah,
well, what's the sound? And they said,
yeah.
no, you've got to rediscover it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I just went to my first sound bath, if you wish. Like they were playing bowls, singing bowls, and the we were laying there, and I was brought into this meditative state where I just felt myself being part of that music, that energy, and I was just being all these colors came, everything was just it was just like how would you say that, it was just like a glorifying moment of just complete peace, love, and harmony. And I was thinking those emotions, when I opened my eyes and was back and the music wasn't there anymore, it was like back to reality. But what if we could actually get there now? So what does your spiritual team, I don't know all the names of who you contact, but what does they say about this time on earth and how we can raise the vibration? Is it only the MBOs or is it other stuff that we can do?
Well, besides being compassionate to everyone, and it's also unconditional love. And that's love that transcends whether they're a different race, a different genre, yeah, whatever, uh, 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 different politics, you name it. Unconditional love. I call it flipping on the love switch. Okay.
I like that.
And when you do that, I mean, it's like a change that you say, I am absolutely going to do that, and you flip on the love switch, and from that moment forward, you are working on loving everyone, no matter what.
Yes, so true. So, how did you? I know you've gotten information about Atlantis and Lemuria. So, what can we learn from that? I mean, is there a reason for this? What we're going through in humanity right now?
Well, first of all, I was told um, I was wondering where the gentle way originated. Okay, when the very first time I was ever able to communicate, and I like this uh, cover on the Sedona Journal of Emergence. I'm sorry, I move it the wrong way. There we go. And because the first time I was ever able to communicate telepathically, I went to a Dick Sutphen seminar in Sedona, Arizona, with my wife, and I'd been to a couple of his, and I didn't think I'd get a whole lot out of it, but my wife hadn't been to one, and so I said, "Well, I'll go to support her." So this was improving your psychic abilities. I think that was the name of the seminar. And on the second day, he had been putting us under into this light trance to do different things. And on the second day, we were supposed to uh, try automatic writing. So instead of doing that, I said, I'm going to try and connect with Reveals the Mysteries, this Indian shaman that Robert Shapiro um, had uh, channeled for me. And I had asked Reveals the Mysteries, is my sole contract to support Robert's work? And Reveals the Mysteries said, no, it is not. And I thought, well, gosh, that's really strange. Seemed like I had been. And so this went on for 2 or 3 years, and that's when we went to the Suffin seminar. And so when he put us under this time, I said, "Reveal some mysteries. Are you there?" And he says, "Yes, I am, Tom." And I said, "Wow, that's really neat." And so I said, "Okay, why am I seemingly the guy that that is really pushing requesting benevolent outcomes?" And he said, "Tom," he said, "You're an Indian shaman at the same time period I am in the 1600s in Western United States. Your name is Stillwater, and you uh, are reincarnating or incarnating into the 20th and 21st centuries in order to reintroduce people to the gentle way." So he gave me the name of my first book the very first time I ever talked to him. And so I said, "Well, that's fine." He said, "Yes, and you're to write books." And I said, "No, no, I'm." By this time, my wife and I had sold the tour business, and we were in the international film and TV program distribution business. And I thought that's what I was going to be doing until I retired. And and so Reveals the Mysteries, I, I said, that's what I'm a business guy. He said, no, books. And so I said, okay. And so I wrote the first book, the very first, 90 days or so after I talked to him. But I couldn't imagine writing multiple books. So if you notice, the name of the website is The Gentle Way Book, singular.com, because that's all I thought I'd be able to write. And here we are 6 books later. So that's, that happened. And then going forward, um, it there came to a point I kept thinking, well, he's obviously the gentle way was at least 300 or 400 years old at that time. I think I'll ask Theo how old is the gentle way, thinking it might be 1,000 years old. And so he said, time. He says, it dates back to your time in Atlantean days when you were inspired to create the gentle way, and you had about 1 million people that were following you. And later I was to learn it, most of the people lived on the island of Poseidia, one of the 2 big islands that were left after the cataclysm that sank most of the Atlantean continent. And and he told me, he said, you eventually uh, found out that the war with Aaron was going to get worse and worse between the Law of One and the sons of Belial. And he said, you need to migrate. So I migrated with 25,000 of my followers to Egypt, and there was this Egyptian princess that helped us settle when she did her meditations and found out that we were nice people. We were not going to subjugate them as the Atlanteans had done hundreds or thousands of years before.
Mm.
And that Egyptian princess is my wife today.
Wow. That's incredible. It must, when you discover this and sometimes a lot of people think that this is just made up.
Mhm.
How did you feel? I mean, did it shift anything within you being acknowledged that this is your past and you have this gift and that you now are on, would I call it a mission? Do you feel like you're on a mission to give
It's going
the
to be a
books
big
to
mission next year.
humanity or
It really gets big. But the I've asked now because I started doing these newsletters. Eventually, I started one newsletter, thinking maybe once a month, and then it was once every 2 weeks, and then it became every single week, and it's 10 to 13 pages long every single week because people from all over the world send in questions for me to ask in this meditative state. So I just accepted that as part of what I'm, my soul contract on earth. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I discovered and that it's going to get really really big next year because that's when my family and I are supposed to travel to Antura's Syrian mothership that's 50 miles above the earth, taking millions of readings a day, and we're going to be on there for 14 days shooting documentaries that will literally change the world because the ETs have been video recording every step of the way for millions of years using little bitty tiny fly-like recorders that operate in at a frequency just above our ability of our eyes to see them. So they've been around. They would know when a big event was coming, and they have these little guys flying around taking uh, recording the whole scenes, and that's what I'm going to be shown. So
I'm
we'll go
speechless.
back into we'll go
I'm
back to
actually
Atlantis. We'll go
speechless,
back
Tom.
to Lemuria. Will people will be able to see Neanderthals in action, and Cro-Magnons, and even farther back to the Lucian model early humans.
So how did you get this message that this big event is happening next year? And do you prepare for it?
Oh yes, I already have what I call my. Now keep in mind, I was told that since I had never had a life in international film and TV distribution, uh, they guided me to have this life because I'd never had a similar life before. So I had to start at the very, very bottom, literally with like two or three films, uh, and work my way up. And for over 20 years, where we were the only international film distribution company between New York and Los Angeles. Okay, so and people would say, Tom, you need to move to Los Angeles. You'll make more money, and I'd say, I may make less money, but I'll be happier. So
Good point.
yeah, and so anyway, it I have developed a shoot sheet of what I need. I've talked to Antura about things we need to see, and he's going to show us. And it's going to be a four camera shoot, and it's going to be my daughter who has a degree in film, uh, and on directing two of the cameras, and along with her husband and my son, and then my wife and I are going to basically be more in one place where we'll be shown all this history and do interviews because on the ship there are 39 different types of people, including bird beings, insect beings, um, you, reptilians, even you name it. Antura is an amphibian, There's 39 different types of beings, and we're going to interview all 39. They're from 37 different planets. So anyway, that's what's supposed to happen next year. And so I've got all the shoot sheet that I'm slowly. In fact, I've got to add another two or three things on today because in the middle of the night, like at 3:44 p.m. a.m. last night, I was saying, "Oh, I don't think I've written that down. Oh, I got to write that down." So
So you're really in that preparation mode. So do you
yeah,
know exactly at what time? Do you have any?
no,
No.
all I
So
know
this will
is the
come out of the
time
blue.
supposed to happen next year. Originally, see, I was closing off my first contact book um, in 2013. Okay. And I didn't know this at the time. And it still took until just recently where I found out like two of my books are out of print right now because there's a shortage of paper and my publisher has not been able to reprint them. Okay. So Antura would know all these things because they could slide up and down uh, on on the time scale. And and so when I was about to close off the book, he was kind of giving me hints, and I'd say, "Oh, you mean I'll be on? I can go on your scout craft with you? Yes. Can I take some photos? Yes. And you were going on like that. I had no clue what he was leading up to. Finally, it's like have to take a 2x4 to a donkey or something. So he finally said, Tom, he said, you and your family are going to come to our mothership and you're going to shoot for 14 days. So I said, oh, okay. And so,
Wow. I'm
and I,
so
and I've,
curious.
and I've executive produced some super low budget movies. I mean, really low budget movies. So I know a little bit about the process. And so I have gained some experience on that side, but not actually producing on the spot. That's different.
Mhm.
So hopefully it won't look too bad.
This is just incredible. I have so many questions. And still, it's like, where do you start if you get that invitation and you're up there? I'm glad you're preparing. I think that would probably be overwhelming. Will you remember everything that is going on? Will it be, I mean,
Yeah.
your take and how does this happen? Are you being picked up in a
Okay.
ship
I'm go-
or
I'm going to have doubts about this happening all the way to the point where Antura knocks on my back door with his three teammates, to introduce themselves. And And so I said, I even asked question, well, are you going to be beamed down? Yes, that's how we're going to get there. And I said, well, is there a light that comes out of your ship? He said, no, we don't need that. And so that's how they're going to appear at my back door to introduce themselves to my family and I. And so then I asked him, well, you know, are you going to have to beam us up, with all of our equipment? He said, no, we're going to have you go to a nearby park, and so we'll appear long enough for you to load your equipment, your four cameras and sound and all on the craft, and then we're going to take off.
that is just so incredible. I
Yeah,
I would love to join you. Is there room?
I,
Seriously.
they said it's not on anyone else's sole contracts but you and your
Oh,
family.
wow.
Now,
That's a big soul contract to carry because you're making a film documentary and you're bringing it back to Earth and you're revealing it, I presume, right?
oh yeah,
So, did
it's
they
going.
say anything about why this now?
Well, it's finally getting to the point where people are accepting the idea that there really are other intelligent species of people in the universe. Up to now, keep in mind, many of the religions have taught that we're the only ones. Okay. And so So that's one reason. And in fact, it's going to even step up in my newsletters. Gosh, I just like the one that I'm going to be sending out later today. I have at least 5 or 6 um, uh, links to people either talking about their experiences seeing UFOs or actual photos or actual videos. They're really stepping this up. And I said, well, but when is it going to change from lights in the sky to um, actually seeing a whole craft? And he said, look for that in 6 months.
Wow. 6 months.
So yeah,
Well, I
so it's
must
going to.
admit, I haven't told anybody outside of the people I normally talk about this with, but I've encountered UFOs. I was in Sedona when it happened, and
Ah,
I've had visitation from reptilians in not long ago. It was in November, October, November, the month where my daughter, she's 15, she has this, she's also very open and in tune, and the reptilian was also in her room, and it was in the kitchen. And I actually had to call on a friend, the psychic medium Laura Fontaine. I don't know if you know her, but she helped me to find the portals where these reptilians came in. And I remember the first time I saw a reptilian, it's many, many years ago. I think it was like, it must have been in 2013 or something. I was talking to another woman, and suddenly next to her comes this out of, just out of the, I don't know how to explain it, out of the wall or something opened, and here was this huge reptilian standing next to her. And I was like, what? I don't even find the words. I was like, do you know what's next to you? And she goes, what are you seeing? And I'm like, there's this huge reptilian standing next to you. And it looked like a rat, sort of. It was weird, the face, and it had this very skinny body with these weird arms. And I was like, you can't see him? He's right next to you. I really don't talk about this. So that was my first experience of other, I guess, dimensional beings, not anchored within the angel realms, if you wish. So it was a powerful experience. So when you're talking about this, and I've seen a craft and I've had experiences, I'm like, wow, are we really there now that this is going to happen? It's incredible. And that makes me think that there's no coincidence that I'm talking to you about this.
Sure.
As this is also part of, like I said, I need to be more open about these experiences, because I
So
haven't really
let
talked
me
about
go back a little bit on there was really there really was a Star Wars, okay? And excuse me, and it lasted for 27,000 universal years, but Earth years are 10 times faster than universal years for us to try and catch up with the rest of the technological universe. And so it was 270,000 Earth years that the Star Wars actually went on, and it happened when the reptilians, who mostly live in another galaxy, the reptilians came to this galaxy to take over some worlds for their resources, and so that started the Star Wars, and it went on for just thousands of years. There were literally people you would wake up every day not knowing whether you were going to live till the next day because back then they didn't just destroy a planet. And both sides did this, both the reptilians and what eventually became the Federation of Planets. They would destroy the sun and destroy all the planets and all the billions of people that lived on these planets. And so it was just a really nasty war, and people didn't know if there was going to be one of these enemy ships that would show up one day and blow your sun apart, and off you go. And it actually, I was told, it actually happened to some people more than once. So they would be reborn on another planet, and that planet would get blown up. So uh, this went on. Finally, there was this little amphibian, me, on the
it.
planet Momo, and And so I suggested, well, why don't you offer them um, to uh, as a peace offering to be part of this Earth experiment that's going to go on? And and the Federation of Planet People said, no, we absolutely detest, we hate these people. Um, we'll never do that. So that was rejected at that time. 450 universal years later, things were even getting worse. Things weren't getting better. And so finally they said, okay, we'll try your idea out. And they accepted it. And so there was peace between the reptilians and and the Federation people, so that 10% of the souls having lives on Earth are reptilian uh, as part of it. And so that's that's how the Star Wars ended, and that sort of wrote my ticket uh, for any life I wanted to live, because everyone wanted to have me in one of their lives to be an advisor to them when they were president of the United States
Mm.
or UK or whatever leadership roles they had on their soul contract. They wanted to add me in. So for that reason, I've already had 1,005 lives, and I have still 300 more to go, including more advisories of leaders. So anyway, sorry for the long answer.
No, it's incredible. I'm just so fascinated because on not a funny way, but for those who are listening and this might be out there, it really resonates with me. I don't know too much about it except that I as I been able to channel Zarius in the Order of Seven, it happened in 2019 or was it 2020? I can't remember now. I think it was earlier. But anyway, I was as I was in this trance state, they activated something in the back of my throat chakra. I'm again sharing this vulnerably because I've not told anybody except for the people who was present and noticed and saw all of this. And they said it was the observers coming through, connecting my channel to what they call the GTS, the Galactic Traveling System. Also, do have I started out as a travel agent. I've been traveling. I love travel, so we have the same background. So it was kind of funny, the Galactic Traveling System. And I actually, in that trance, I get what people watching me described as a attack of some sort. Like I was shaking and I was almost falling out of my chair, and they had to they came up to me and hold me, and they couldn't get me back until it settled and it was in place. And I would feel like I was being sucked through this, or consciousness was being sucked through this GTS, where I suddenly was seeing different galaxies, and I was shown images, and I would see these light paths, if you wish, traveling like there was layers within this system, and you could see things move, and I couldn't catch what was moving, but it was such a powerful, um, I don't know how to explain, powerful experience. And after I saw this ship and I was in that ship, where I had met somebody, an energy that represented, well, he called himself Stargazer, and it was Estella and Nova. And Estella and Nova suddenly came through the GTS. Every time I got that feeling that now they're coming, I would get the shakes, and I would get the information from and I would see different perspectives that I hadn't seen before as a
Right.
channel. And I would see the last planet that I was on, and which I feel is my mission. This, if I could call it a mission, I feel that I was on a planet called, or they call the galaxy Tresna Imperium, and I was on Tresna. And I channel an energy that calls herself Mother Tresna. And she says, I'm the sister of Mother Gaia, or Earth. And the planets are, and she would explain how the planets are separated. They're so close, but you can't, it's not visible. It's like pulling a sock. On the other side, you've got Tresna in another galaxy. And some of these people, and I would start getting people into my sessions doing life between lives hypnotherapy. And these random people would come into my office. And this particular person, Zarius, my spirit guide, said, be aware of this person coming. And I was like, okay, what does this mean? And I did the hypnosis for her. I brought her back into soul spirit, and she started to talk about Tresna. And I was like, what? She had been on Tresna. And it was like, who is this person? I don't know this person. And here she is telling me about Tresna. And I said, why did you bring her in? Well, let's ask her what she does for a living. And she was a mountain climber. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because we had been working on a crystal. We were asked, because Tresna had a lot of crystal caves. And a lot of us that was on Tresna have lives been on Atlantis. I'm one of them, with my spirit guide, Zarius, actually. And so we have some resources from there. And so we had been working on this crystal for so long. And they had told me that we should place the crystals on mountaintops. I never thought about how do we place a crystal on a mountaintop, right? And she said, well, I'm climbing, and it's actually in my book. I channeled a book called Awaken to the Power of the Universe. And I got the message from my spiritual team, Zarius in the Order of Seven. They're the one who gave the name. I just channeled this verbatim. And they said, the crystal is now filled with love and light, and with the tresninins is what they call the essence of the souls who's been on Tresna, that have those resources that can actually facilitate the crystals. And we've been kind of working on this crystal, and I actually measured it, like the weight of it, and everything has changed. And this person was the one who's going to bring it up on the mountaintop. And she brought it, and she said, it's in the book, light up different continents. And she told me that, oh, I'm going on Mount Dictau, which is on the border of Russia and Europe. I was like, are you kidding me? So this is a few years ago, and she was practicing doing all this to get to the health wise to get there. And she brought the crystal, and she filmed it, and she put it under the rock when she climbed it. She didn't make it to the top. She got sick, but she found a perfect spot, and she sent me a video, and we were guiding her up the mountain energy wise. We would know her schedule when she would climb, and she put the hope crystal, is what they call it, on that mountaintop, knowing today what is happening in Russia, knowing that we've given that crystal from Tresna was a gift, and we've given our soul's resources to that and enlightened that, our vibration, our unconditional love to that crystal. And it's now on the top of Dictau, sending light and love through the elements. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just incredible feeling of being part of something much greater than what the human mind can understand.
Let
And
me
I
go
just,
back to one thing that you touched on before. You were talking about these pathways between planets and things like that. I'm told that there are these energetic pathways, okay, and um, that's how Antura and all the other ETs that come here, they call it portal hopping, because you cannot get completely across the universe in one jump. You have to go on these energetic pathways. The ship does, and so they portal hop, and it might be two or three stops, but very quickly, bang bang, like that
it was
across.
very quickly.
Yeah, and they get here doing this portal hopping. And he said, Tom, this was Antura talking. He said it's sort of like a Southwest Airlines plane that starts off in Florida, Orlando, or something, and and stops two or three times across the United States before it reaches California. And I expressed surprise at that analogy, and he said, "Oh, Tom, we know everything about you." So that's that
That
was it.
I thank you for sharing that. I think that just validates more of what I've seen because I haven't been able to speak with anybody who's had similar experiences.
Mm.
So it's fascinating to me that you have that contact and you have that, and that you're getting the information so purely and so clear
Yeah,
without,
and
having to.
I mentioned that Antura has three teammates. One of the teammates, I have a really hard trouble in getting in receiving harder names. Okay, um, so he called her exotic girl, and he said she is just really exotic looking. With even different than cat eyes, but you know that range or something. And and my daughter is from that same planet in the Sirius B star system. And then there's another guy that I just call average guy. Again, I can't even on Antura's name. I have a really big problem to the point he almost screamed it at me one day. And so he I was going and to no Antura, like yelled in my ear, and so so the average guy now he's like 5.5 or 6 feet, whatever, and and my son is from the same planet. Okay, then there's one other guy that's 7 feet tall, but he has no connection with my family. My wife and the husband of my daughter, um, they're not from the Sirius B star system, so they're from other planets where in the galaxy somewhere, and so there is no one on the Sirius B um, mothership that is uh, uh, is connected to them. And I just found out this is going out in the newsletter today. I asked Antura, I said, "Was that your mothership that did the Phoenix Lights?" And he said, "Caught in the act." It
Oh,
was.
no, really?
Yeah, because he had previously told me that that they that the Syrians cover the bottom half of the United States and all of South America to do all these millions of scientific readings as part of the Earth experiment, and so I put two and two together and thought, that's Southern United States, so that's why I asked it this week.
Oh, I would be so interested if you could ask Anshura if what kind of who's who's the energies or who is traveling to Norway to Eggedal? Who is coming or Hashedal? I can't remember what the name is, but there's one place in Norway that they're seeing a lot of UFOs,
Oh,
and I would love to know who they are. If there's That's a
yeah.
question I should ask. I should
Supposedly
send you that.
the Palladians have the top half of the United States and Canada and maybe Europe. I'm not positive, but there's 25 of these motherships all circling, orbiting the Earth, um, and naturally they're at a frequency where we can't see them, so they won't scare us to death. We'd think it was Independence Day all over again
Mm.
from the movie.
Yeah,
And
I know.
so
I actually like that movie, to be
I
honest.
know, it's one of those
Yeah,
uh, popcorn eating movies.
you're right.
So anyway, it who knows? It may be the Palladians, but I can always ask or send me an email and
Yeah, I
remind me.
actually think you're right. I think the Pleiadians because looking at people who's drawn Pleiadians and what I saw when I was visited by Stargazer, Nova, and Stella, they look like that image, if you wish. They have that look on them. Very, how would you call it? Very light, um, um, tall,
Yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah.
aesthetic.
There are Pleiadians that look just like us, with the exception that they do have pointed ears. Okay.
Yes, you're right.
Okay. Okay, but they also have, because there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of planets in the Pleiades. They have all sorts of other types of beings too. Just like Sirius B, just one sun has, you know, 30, well, over 39 different types of people,
Wow.
and so who knows how
Yeah, who
many the
knows?
Pleiades
Well,
have.
yeah. I
And
guess we'll know soon enough, won't we, Tom? Because you're bringing you're going on a ship, so you'll probably document a lot. It's
yeah.
going to be so interesting.
So anyway, this Palladian is he monitors my conversations. I didn't know this for a long time, and and finally, Antura said yes. He doesn't exactly uh, hasn't wanted to get known, but he is monitoring these conversations. And this Palladian is part of a group of sort of like Palladian scientists. They meet with 6 different countries monthly, okay? Uh, because all these countries are trying to back engineer these crashed ET crap that date back to the even like the 30s and 40s and early 50s, where radars would interfere with their instruments and they crashed, and so the United States is just one of 6 that that they meet with, and none of the 6 knows that he's meeting with the other 5. Okay,
Hmm.
they all think it's just them. So that's
Interesting. Well, wow, I could talk to you for hours, Tom. This conversation has gone way out there. I mean, I was
I'm
thinking,
sorry
let's do some.
we were
No,
close to
not your fault. I was
in the
bringing it on.
middle.
I mean, there's a reason for this, and that we're sharing this now. I feel like the time is so right. And like I told you before we went on, that the next season of Spiritual Quest will dive into the reawakening of the universe, right? And
Yeah.
so I think this, and I was told, I'm told by spirits, Zarius and the Order of Seven, they guide me. I always ask, so what do you want me to focus on? How can I serve? What is best for humanity, what is needed now. And that's what they said. This is the season you're doing this. And I thought, okay, I already had planned someone else for the end of the year. And they were like, nope, shift your plan. He's going last. And so I know there's a reason for that. And this conversation just confirms it for me. So I'm just deeply grateful to you, Tom, that you're so open with everything that you've experienced. And not only am I deeply grateful that you're actually willing, or should I say willing or accepting, or that you're just being you and going on that ship and documenting this for humanity. Wow. Thank you.
They tell me it's my sole contract for the last 10 million years. So there you go. So
That's a
and
celebration.
you know, the history that I'm going to show on Earth is going to be such that it's going to upset a lot of people, and hopefully I'll get out of here, of old age, but I don't know. It's
Oh, wow. Let's leave on a happy note, shall we?
Yeah, everyone
So
requests for
let's,
benevolent outcome
yes,
for harmless
there you
good
go.
and continuing health. Right, you have two. One goes directly, and people really, of different faiths really argue with me on this, and I explain to them, your guardian angel is actually a golden light being, and the creator of this universe put out a call for, and Theo said it humorously, only golden light beings need apply, uh, to watch over us on a minute by minute basis during our lives on Earth. And and you can say your prayer. And if you want to say it, dear God, dear Jesus, dear Allah, whatever, whatever you want to say, it's just that it's turned back. It's like the CEO of a mammoth company with millions of employees, and he sends it down to, hey, you take care of this, and
Mm.
that's sort of how it works. And uh, and when you say a prayer for other people or beings, dogs, cats, whatever, because I have the Gentle Way with Pets book, I will mention. Um, when you say a prayer for other people or beings, you say, I ask, and it goes to, there's like a million souls doing that work. And I said, well, are they like golden light beings too? And Theo said, no, they're younger souls, but they're eager. And so
Mm.
that's their job, is to handle all the prayers in the world. So there's a little over a million of these whole souls doing that.
Well, before we end this conversation, Tom, is there anything you would like to share or any words of inspiration for the audience?
Mm. Experiment with requesting benevolent outcomes. It will change your life. I guarantee it. You just have to stick with it a little while, and you will see. Start with the easy stuff and work on up. You will see it will make your life less stressful, less fearful, and more successful.
Thank you,
Guarantee.
Tom. That was wonderful. And you know, my request for a most benevolent outcome for this podcast, yep, it's been answered. So thank you so much for sharing your insight, your knowledge, and your wisdom with everyone listening or watching. I truly appreciate it. So, if you would like to get your hands on one of Tom's books or sign up for his extensive newsletter, where subjects covered are on every topic you can imagine, from the history of the Earth to aliens and UFOs, you'll find the link in the episode description. And now you can also connect with my guests live. Every month I go live with one of my previous guests who will teach on their topic. So make sure you sign up for the Spiritual Quest Newsflash to get notified and join the Spiritual Quest Livestream Masterclass for free. You'll find the link in the episode description. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Tom. Sending you lots of love and light from me, your host, Vibeke Garnos, always guided by spirit.